Hello everyone, how are you doing? This is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. We assist companies in consultation, also ISO certification, and all derivatives. We have over 40 plus years in quality that stems in aerospace, medical implants, medical materials, printing, and plastic distribution, where we dealt in all industries. Today, this video is about Scott Kirby, CEO, United Airlines, and passengers warned of AOG, Technics, Boeing, and Airbus quality, and they have a lot to be deserved. We're going to hit upon Boeing, but you also have to have Airbus as well, because you have AOG Technics, which was a supplier of materials to jet engines, and they fudged a lot of documentation, falsifying documents. They've been taken to task. I think they're even out of business. But how do we know as passengers that they didn't migrate into the system? And without a doubt, they've been in business since 2015 to present. So if they were doing it and they got caught now, you can just imagine from 2015, that's over nine years. We do not know what type of parts are in those aircraft engines. They try to say, we have 76, we have 75. Each airline traced it back and said they have some in this engine, some in that engine, but nevertheless, it's still flying. Think about that. Scott, we're going to get into business, but I want to introduce also Gerald Letterman, EVP and CFO of United Airlines, where he said, I guess at a cocktail party, that it's because of COVID that Boeing has issues. No, Gerald, it's not because of COVID. It's because of lacks in quality. And that stems since 2002, as far as we can see. And let me give you the background here. Ladies and gentlemen, passengers. I know you're probably saying, well, Daryl, I fly all the time. It's the safest thing. Well, you've got parts in that plane that have not been really, shall we say, certified per se. Boeing gave up supplier auditing to a piece of paper. That's what they did. I'm going to show you this, and then each successive CEO that comes out here, we're going to use Mr. Kirby as the poster child for, and Mr. Lederman, who's a United Airlines CFO and EVP and MICAKEY. All right, anyway, here it goes. You can't make this up. I've been involved with quality far too long to make this up. And we're going to show you this. The American National Standards Institute is a not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation, been around over 100 years, that has both federal agencies and corporations on board. In 2013, I gave a speech at the American Society for Quality. This guy, Dave Levy, Region 3 Director, was sent there to destroy me. Nobody's going to destroy me. They may try as best they can, but like a phoenix, we always rise from the ashes. And this guy came there, and we talked afterwards, and he said, Daryl, you're a knowledgeable guy. I really can't say anything, but that's my word against his, all right? But I'm going to say this. He said that. He said, we have no problem. In fact, the American Society for Quality owned ANAB at the time, the American National Crediting Board, 50%. The ASQ is the American Society for Quality, and they too sat on the board of ANSI, just like ANAB. You also have the factor that at that time, ANSI had control over the board. Actually, ANSI had control over ANAB 50% as well. So he said that we have no problem. In fact, ANAB supports you, sir. Yeah, you're going to see how much support they give you. Then what happens? 2016, 3 years later, you have this guy here, Randy Doherty, who at one time, and I'm going to show you the picture coming up, and this is why we did not join. We refused to join, and I'm going to show you why. And I hope that you who are watching would agree with me that you would refuse to join, because there's no legislation about my company issuing quality certifications at all. We've been in business a long time too now. So you have this guy who said that it's all voluntary. At the time, he was the technical advisor for ANAB, and he also was the principal on the IF, International Accreditation Form Tax Report 990. Let me just tell you a brief overview that ANSI and ANAB are underwriters for the International Accreditation Form incorporated in Delaware. That means that they take responsibility for any systematic or product failure. That's what they do. And nobody's taking them to task. Why? More than likely because they work also with the American Bar Association, and they have the DOJ and FBI sitting on ANSI's board, no less. So at the time he invited, I refused. Because in 2015, ladies and gentlemen, he had handed over leadership. He had handed over leadership of the IAF to this communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who's been involved with our quality since 1994. To make matters worse, communist China puts pressure on this guy, is mandated to take our data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. You can't make this up. And he was also caught in Wuhan, China, 2017, issuing a certificate, but that's for another story, another time. Randy, at the time, was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IF. So in 2016, Randy invited us to join the IF or ANAB or both, but ANSI ANAB sat on the IF while this guy, the communist Chinese national, was controlling it from 2015 to 21. I, as a proud American, refused. You have ANSI ANAB, that ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. And here you go, proof of the pudding. They sit between 2015 and 2021 on the IF, being watched over and controlled by the communist Chinese national, who's mandated to take your data. And during this time, because ANSI has a lot of federal agencies on board, FBI, CDC, NIH, FDA, you name it, they got them on there. And they all got hacked, okay, during this time, 2015 to 21. They're still getting their data taken. Or is it taken or given away? You have ANAB, who sits on, of course, ANSI, and ANSI sits on ANAB's board. ANSI is the founder of the IAF, right down here. They are a founder. They founded the IAF. They basically own it. They are, again, underwriters for the International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware. Any company that's on there is equivalent in accreditation to ANAB. They are also an underwriter for the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation in Australia. To prove the point is this was an article that Randy was quoted in, and this is basically telling you that the IAF and ILAC are sister organizations. Now we come on to Boeing, and here you go, Mr. Kirby. Here's Boeing. Now Airbus has some problems too. Because Boeing is a larger entity and they have a lot more aircraft out there than Airbus. When you're having AOG Technics, who are putting parts into these aircraft engines, both on the Airbus side and also on the Boeing side, you've got some serious issues with United Airlines. Serious. And Boeing sits on the board. ANSI's board, right over by ANAB, as I showed you. This is the company that they demand to have their suppliers use. Why? Because they sit on the board. It gets better. In 2002, one of the scary parts of this mess is that Boeing gave up supplier auditing to this document, supplier bulletin, and it is PQIT-02-001, 2002, July. And it states that if you're, well, you know what? I'm going to show it to you because I don't want to read this to you. I don't want you to fall asleep. It basically says, take your AS9100 certificate that's ANAB accredited or ANSI ANAB accredited, send it in to us, send us your parts, and for 22 years, we don't have to go on site to look at your products. We don't care whether it comes out of a shoebox or not. They just didn't. They gave it up. Again, and here goes a very disconcerting thing. The FAA gave up regulatory authority to Boeing. That means they are the FAA. So when you hear there's an engineer who has most recently done a whistleblower, his name slips my mind, on the 777 and 787. 787 came to fruition in 2009. In 2009, the FAA gave regulatory authority to Boeing, meaning they are the FAA. And let me read it to you, Mr. Kirby and Mr. Lederman. The FAA increased the authority of Boeing's commercial airplanes division to self-certify its own aircraft. The authority extended to Boeing under the new system allows Boeing employees to perform tasks on behalf of the FAA that include oversight of testing and product standards, along with certification of aircraft technologies and new aircraft designs. When they say aircraft technologies, Mr. Kirby, you know what happens? That's the MCAS system. And then you have the factor that they increased aircraft designs. There goes the 787. So that engineer is absolutely correct. What they did is, rather than grab the FAA with both hands and cherish it, because what happened is, when this happened, James McCurney was the CEO who brought the 730 MAX to fruition. Then you have Dennis Muhlenberg. He was a regulator. Muhlenberg is a regulator, and David Calhoun is a regulator of the FAA because they made the employees FAA regulators, basically. So how can one regulator watch over another regulator, Mr. Kirby? Your guess is as good as mine. And here on Boeing Supplier Portal, you have the factor that ANSI ANAP are the ones who are called out as the, as the accreditation body or internationally equivalent. To make matters even better, they sit on the board right here, Mr. Kirby. They sit on the Management Systems Accreditation Committee that can grant, suspend, and withdraw certification. I'll say this. I'm a registrar. I had some of my customers try to get into Boeing. In fact, I was on a conference call, Mr. Kirby. I was on a conference call with two ladies in Texas. I think that's where they were from, yes. And the company was in Garland, Texas that I was dealing with. They want to come on board with me. And what happened, these two ladies didn't know the cockpit from the tail section or toilet. But they said, because they're reading off the purchasing document, well, if you're not ANSI ANAP, we can't use you. Can you imagine that for a piece of paper? And you can see how bad the quality is already. 22 years of neglect for a piece of paper because, listen to me, what happened here is Boeing broke the Sherman-Clayton Act of antitrust and anti-competition and monopoly. They are a monopoly. You can see it right off the bat. 3 strikes and you're out. They sent out the supplier bulletin, calls out ANSI ANAP further in that document. Number 2 is they have them on their supplier portal that they call out ANSI ANAP or internationally equivalent. And number 3, and this is the best one, they sit on the board constricting anybody who can enter into the AS9100 certification process. Also, they were caught fudging documentation. Boeing was while they were a regulator. On top of it, Mr. Kirby, just most recently at their Boeing Bell composite facility in Pennsylvania, they were caught fudging documentation from 2007 to 2018. 11 years they were doing that. And I'm a composites guy. The most important part of composites is time, temperature, and pressure. And if you don't got it, you can have a fatality. On top of it, you see Boeing. Here's one of their certificates. It has TUV on there, TUV SUD. Sitting on ANSI's board are 7 different registrars. As you can see, it's TUV. So I'm telling you this, you've got ANAB, their accreditation body that, see, right over here. You see that? They have ANAB. They sit on ANSI's board. Right over by the company that they certify. There is no oversight. There is none. The certificate is worthless. On top of it, Mr. Kirby, the FAA sits by Boeing. Yes, the FAA on ANSI. And here you go, the Department of Justice, who just fined them $8.1 million, yet they sit on the same board. Do you think they're ever going to receive that money? Probably not. And also, you have the FBI. And we'll go through Airbus. Airbus resolves global bribery scandal for record $4 billion. The company, which admitted 5 counts of failing to prevent bribery, had used a network of secret agents to pay large-scale bribes to officials in foreign countries to land high-value contracts between 2011 and 2015. Hey, Boeing, you want to know where your competition is? They pay money so that they can buy the aircraft. Isn't that tender? But conversely, DOJ, which I just showed you, sits over by Boeing, fines Boeing over $2.5 billion in charges for fraud conspiracy over 737 MAX crashes. How could they even do that when you have the FAA sitting by Boeing on ANSI's board, right over by the DOJ? It's a harmonious group that fine means nothing. Or Gerald, as they say in my neck of the woods, maybe yours too, it means bupkis. Anyway, my telephone number is 203-556-1493, and this is only the beginning. We're going to be exposing more and more, airline companies because you got to know this. This video will be the baseline for all of them. So I'm going to do the introduction to many of these CEOs, give them a little bit of a taste, not much, and then we're going to continue on. And remember this. The truth will set you free, but not until it's finished with you. That was by David Foster Wallace. And we're going to leave it here. Mr. Kirby and Mr. Lederman, thank you so much for coming in today. But you and your passengers, there's something wrong going on between AOG Technics, the quality of aircraft, both at Boeing and Airbus, is compromised by these defects that are migrating into the system, both on purpose with, let's say, Boeing, and just by happenstance by AOG Technics. I thank you, and I appreciate your time.